The most amazing thing is just the diversity of the city.
You hear a lot how diverse it is, and that's a wonderful thing, but the polarity between races is even more important.
Fast forward to this day and age where you see something written like, niggers, I'ma kill you, don't come outside type of thing. It's like, what?
Vallejo, it's like any other place, you know what I mean? So it's not necessarily removed from systemic racism.
Racism is real. It's not just in the big cities. It's like right here, right now.
Other people don't have an investment, but these people have literally paid the ultimate price. They've paid blood and bones, you know what I mean? They've paid their loved ones' lives.
They shot him all in his back.
Folks that aren't affected directly can't understand it. You know, it's easy to be in your nice little comfortable home and none of it touches you.
Well, I had to sit there and watch tonight. My brother was murdered. Did you offer condolences? Did you offer a prayer? Did you ever reach out to my family? No, you didn't.
We're gonna have to stop saying things like this is what matters and this is who we are, and actually start practicing those things.
I felt pulled in the beginning because my late husband was a police officer in Richmond. And so he had been a police officer for a long time before he lost his life. So I felt like I belonged to this family of law enforcement where, you know, we stuck together, had each other's back, visited, they were our friends. And then when he died, shortly after I met, which is my husband today, Vernon Williams, now I feel like I'm on this other side, getting to know a different side, and he is Black, and so I was seeing how he got picked on simply because of his skin color. And so I felt the division. And one day I just felt so bogged down from everything that was going on. I told my husband, I said, I can't do this anymore. And I'm not gonna allow anybody to make me feel like I have to be on this side or that side. And that day, probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I just decided, drew the line in the sand for myself, and I was like, I'm not gonna be on anybody's side. I'm on the side of Christ. And I'm on the side that what is right and what's wrong is wrong.
For me, yes, the churches have been on the sidelines. I've had this conversation with my aunts where I said, you know, we're supposed to be winning souls for Christ, but how do we do that? Where do we do that? It's just one-on-one, right? Like I tell a friend and a friend and a friend and a friend. But to win the masses, we have to be out there, right? And we don't do that. We don't outreach at all.
Whatever religious group you come from, need to get onto the bandwagon, have gotten onto the bandwagon. Thank you, Martin Luther King, okay? And I think that that gentleman had the idea and saw what President Obama once said is taking a protest and moving it to policy. That's where I'm at. Okay? And I think if local faith-based communities espouse that philosophy to its constituents and people accept it as a moral and ethical concept, that needs to be in our hearts and in our minds every day.
I would say that it would definitely appear that the church has been absent. I know that there have been attempts by certain people, leaders in the church, to do things over time, because I've heard about them through the grapevine. But the real work, meeting those families just like God would, where they were, where they were. We can give tithes, we can do all these things, but people are so important. You might read about something that happens in Vallejo, where a young person is killed. Even at that particular march or rally, people were saying, George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, but they didn't even know who the people were or are here who died. And not even considering when they're doing these marches to reach out to the families, to invite them to be a part of it. It's just a certain culture that has existed here for so long that people have just been used to allowing other people to handle it and kind of not taking responsibility and shaping their own communities. And the time is now to do that. And I'm hoping and praying. I'm believing God. I'm seeing what's happening, the movement that's happening, and I'm very thankful that people are beginning to speak up.
There was a split in African American faith communities around the proper role of black ministers in social protest. The Baptists actually divided in 1961 between the National Baptist Convention and the Progressive Baptist Convention, which sided with Dr. King and argued that the role of the black clergy was as social activists in challenging racial segregation and fighting for progressive social change. But the vast majority of black Baptist ministers said that that was not the role of the church. And so there was a tension within the church at a national level. Nevertheless, there would not have been successful civil rights organizations had there not been the financial and the political support of key black denominations.
There's this this diluted idea of what unity means within the church. So then it creates and kind of engenders this apathy that we have in terms of speaking out on social justice issues, where you may have Church A over here who believes that social justice is a huge issue, and then you have Church B over here that thinks that the fight for equality and social justice is a tool of the enemy to create division. Which, interestingly enough, when we started promoting our event, the Undivided event, the Worship March, there were people, when we boosted the post to a range of about 50 miles, and man, the trolls came out. But it's so funny because some of the trolls were people who professed to be Christian. And one of the things specifically that they said, like one comment, which I was undaunted by the comments. I actually felt like the comments really kind of fueled and showed me about what we were doing was important. Because I was like, if people in the church community like have this diluted sense of what unity means, then what we're doing is really important and significant. And one person saw the flyer and they said, oh, what a mighty work for the cause of Satan. Another person said, the fight for equality and justice is divisive and it's a tool of Satan. It's a tool of the enemy that has no part, or the body of Christ should have no part in that. Like they literally said that. But the reality is that the same God that we're petitioning, he cares about the lives of everybody. I'm straight up, Black Lives Matter, but I recognize that there's inherent dignity to every human life. And I think that to some extent, as the church, that reality has kept us from being able to recognize, hey, there are systemic inequities in our society that have to be dealt with. And so somebody from the community, they said this, I read it on Facebook, we were actually having a conversation. I think the most powerful tool for change in this area would be the unity of the impacted community and the faith community standing together as one and demanding change. One of the things I was told over a year ago was that the city officials didn't think there was a real problem since the churches were silent. And she said it was devastating to hear and has caused a lot of pain, but it's never too late to change the status quo. So, we're gonna get flack for coming in late. We're gonna get flack for coming in the ninth inning, We'll get flack for that. And that's just what it is. But we're coming.